Thanks very much for the introduction. So last week we jumped into looking at some of the framework mapping, and a few of the people said, I wasn't here the couple of weeks before, so would you mind maybe just doing a recap of what this is all about? So let me just do a short introduction, and then we're going to focus on what Mario has been doing in terms of the mapping and the challenges around frameworks that control LLMs and data privacy. So there's some really exciting things, and we've got two sections. One is a set of questions that we would go through before you start with an LLM project, questions to understand where you are. And then we go into actually setting up a project and initiating some of the things. So we'll try to really just focus on that for today. And then next week, we're going to focus on data quality for this insurance claim process automation. So you'll see on my screen, this is the first case study that we're doing. And it's all about trying to automate the claims process as quickly as possible. So if we can get straight through processing where someone raises a claim and it goes automatically gets approved, that would be fantastic. Lots of people would be happy with that. And it was very interesting. Yesterday, I attended a conference, and one of the things that I had forgotten about, Mario, you may be interested in this, in that some of our people, one of the insurers, lots of the insurers in South Africa, they have funeral policies. Now, lots of these people cannot afford to pay for the funeral unless that policy pays out, but like really quickly. So they've got to bury the people very quickly. And if they don't get the policy paid out, then all sorts of things happen. And they start to borrow money and things like that, and it doesn't work out. So having this level of straight-through processing is very important to them. Otherwise, they have all sorts of negative consequences. And that just reminded me yesterday of how important some of these things are. So the business process works as follows. We have a first notice of loss where the claimant will raise a claim that may be through a broker. Now, I remember if we keep talking about this funeral policy scenario, I had a friend who was building tombstones, granite tombstones for people to bury them in, and he was also providing this funeral policy, but it backed up onto an insurer. So he would be the person that they came to get the money from, and he would have to go and do it via the insurer. So this process can be disconnected. So they may be across many parties, and it's not about one insurer doing it all. So first notice of loss, the claimant says, I have a problem. This is my policy. And we go through a process of trying to work with that individual and collect as much information as we can to do the next step, which is taking in all the photographs, doing a validation, checking to see whether it may be fraudulent, processing the documentation and the evidence, doing the fraud detection and risk assessment, decisioning on the claim, digital decisioning where possible, if not, humans in the loop, settlement and payment, and then customer communication and feedback. So high-level process for the things that we're trying to automate. Okay, now if I go further, this is something that I discovered that Accord, one of the insurance industry standards, has layouts or message types. So you can see FNOL is the message type that goes from the portal to the claim system to say, okay, this is the first notice of loss. And then they've got DRICM. So what I've done here is just show you the stage of the business process, the system that's doing the work. And here we see the customer portal handing it over to the claim system. So that customer portal needs to get sufficient information to do the work and to complete the transaction with all the data and then send it. And so it goes, and this is a UML interaction diagram. So this is basically, we need to automate this entire process, and understanding that you may be using web APIs or software services. So this is this high level diagram that we are setting up. And then what I've done is just shown you how I map this to the DMBOK, and the areas that may be involved, and then also to reference and master data. So as an example, when there's a first notice of loss, we've got to identify and match the customer, the policy, and the assets that were being insured. Okay, so there's 3 levels of entity resolution, and how MDM would need to support if we wanted to automate this, or if we wanted to create a chatbot that would engage with this. These are the types of lookups that chatbot would need to do. The next one would be claimant, who's the insured party, who the third party entities that are involved in this. So it's quite amazing to see the amount of master data lookups that need to be done as part of this process. So again, we need to be aware of that. And this one is probably the scariest of the lot, where if we automate FNOL and a guided intake using natural language chatbots, then these are the typical frameworks that we would need to pay attention to. So it's GDPR, HIPAA, so if there's a health claim. Now, if we have data privacy, if we have children involved, or things like that, there some issues come about. Then we've got ISO 27000, EU AI Act, NIST AI framework, 42,000 for AI management accord. So lots of things that we need to take into consideration. And it was nice to be able to do this, where you can see every single use case, or there's a new terminology that's coming out. Every agent, we can have this whole process, and then we can have specialized agents or agentic AI that can be involved in helping deliver the service to the business. So can you see here the list of different areas, and these ones over here are part of the risk engine that the risk engine needs to take care of. And then what's interesting is Mario has built a really nice, what he calls the forces framework from an AI governance point of view. And you can see that we need to pay attention to all of these things: frameworks, operations, data management, risk management, cybersecurity, ethics, and AI systems and models. And these are all of the different use cases that are coming in. So what's nice to be able to do is, for each one of those use cases, we can determine what are the challenges and what do we need to pay attention to. Okay. I really like this diagram to be able to help the person understand. Now, this is part of the questionnaire that Mario runs in Prodago to be able to assess what do we need to pay attention to. What are the things that are important if we wanted to automate this business use case? Okay, so lots of things that need to get involved when we start making these business decisions. So this is part of the planning. The business have said, as part of the data strategy, this is what they want to automate, and now we need to do the appropriate planning. And you can see there are lots of different elements that come about. And the thing that really struck me was that it's amazing how, whilst AI is the one out there almost doing this extensive work, it's also bringing together data, risk, cybersecurity, ethics, records management, AI framework. So it's dependent on everybody. And that's possibly why we're seeing so many of these failures, is that there's so many dependencies that need to be taken into consideration. And one would work through basically all of these scenarios to understand what it is that we're working on, from reporting, risk aggregation, monitoring of the ML operations, monitoring of the ML model, so the ML drift, records and retention. Can you see there? So it's quite amazing how many things get involved when you put together these type of operations. And then there's a more detailed thing. So can you see here, customer submits loss details, chatbot forms, what is the risk tolerance, the risk accountabilities, the robustness principles, stewardship. All of these things have been highlighted that we need to pay attention to. And then what's interesting as well, okay, great. What are the frameworks that we need to listen, we need to pay attention to? And there's guidelines, AI adoption framework, national AI index, national data strategy, NDMO, UK procurement, NIST, AI, RFM. And so we're seeing the message is always there that if you need to pay attention to all of these frameworks, you're probably going to get lost in framework hell and just trying to piece all this stuff together. And what we're desperately trying to show is if we can link these frameworks together using OPs and deliverables that are created during the project, then a lot of the background connections can be handled by a system. We can orchestrate and automate, and that's a lot of where Mario will be paying attention to. And at the end of the day, this is what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to say, okay, this is our risk tolerance. So these are the ones that we must be really concerned about. That OP over there, that's very high from our risk point of view. This is okay. These are acceptable OPs. And then with respect to the National AI Index, again, depending on where you are from a level 1 to a level 5, these are the OPs and the DCAM, ISO standards, corporate regulations, AI acts, and then the people, the team size. So all of these things have an impact on choosing the use cases that we can do and helping us choose the use cases and where to start. And so this is just something that's been released now, the KSA National AI Index. It was released 3 weeks ago. And these are the dimensions of the AI index. So again, it's about defining against your requirements, the ambitions. And I heard a really nice definition of a strategy. And basically what we're saying is the strategy is there to address the challenges that the organization is facing to realize its ambitions. Okay, so this is our use case. This is what we want to do. And we want to get to those ambitions. But at the moment, we're battling to get there. What are the constraints? What capabilities do we need? And then how do we deliver without spending too much time in this different area? So that's a high-level summary. I probably took longer than I should have. Just maybe some questions or some feedback. Anyone, is that a good summary of why we're doing this and what is it all about using an insurance claim? PG, any comments from you? Are you comfortable? Okay, great. So what I'd like to do,
a thumbs up.
you got the thumbs up. Fantastic. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to Mario. And Mario, I think I'm not sure where you'd like to start. Would you like to start with the actual and I've actually got some of that Power BI up and running, and sure, I started just to do a visual representation of some of the questions that the survey or the questions need to take into consideration. Framework questionnaire. I'm hoping that this shows it. Come on. Okay, so these are the elements of that AI forces framework that Mario put together. And if I look at this, if I choose the if I just focus on AI frameworks, these are the operating procedures. So business alignment, conduct a cost-benefit analysis, record and document risk-benefit trade-off, assess these different areas. Now, if we go to data operations, we can see here data stewardship, data ownership, data sources, metadata, retention, data requirements. If we look at risk management, these are the types of things that we need to check to see that we've paid attention to them. Cybersecurity, that comes in play, ethics, and then the AI system. So all the different possible things that we need to take care of. But at the same time, we need to understand what we refer to as that crawl, walk, run. And I'll just quickly show you that. If I bring in the crawl, walk, run filter, so just quickly bring this in, crawl, walk, run. Okay, so if I look at the crawls, these are the things that we should be doing when we start. Okay, so when it's got something to do with AI systems and models, these are the crawl procedures. Document technical and business limitations of the AI system, AI case inventory, define security requirements, metrics, objectives, requirements. If we look at the frameworks, those are the crawl on the framework. So what this really nice crawl, walk, run is to say, if I'm in a crawl state, then these are the things I should be taking care of. And I may have to do other stuff, and then if I'm in a walk stage, then I'd be doing this type of thing. So maybe just to pause there to, Paul, is that making sense to you as well, where you can configure, depending on where your skills are, what is it that you need to do? All right, Mario, can I hand over to you?
Yes.
Did I set the foundation appropriately there for you, or am I missing something?
You did. I'll let you stop the sharing and here. I like, Howard, how you introduced that. What is a strategy? Okay, strategy is the mean an organization needs plan to achieve its ambition. So when you apply that framework to governance, what does that mean? I guess the question could be, what's your governance strategy? It means what type of what's the nature of the governance you need to achieve your objective? And people are not asking themselves that question. They consider like governance like a complete set of capabilities that you need. But if you're saying my organization wants to achieve objective related to claim automation, and we want to put in place and build first notification of loss capability, then the question is, what governance do you need to achieve this objective? And this mindset points to specific governance capabilities, and this mindset is never there. Governance is addressed as a set of structural elements. You need policies and committees, but it's not thought of in the sense of what do you need to succeed. And if you don't do this, you end up with just a big structure disconnected by design from the objective. But if you turn it the other way around, if you're saying, here's what I want to do, first notification of loss, what do I need to succeed? And that's an approach that leads to a lean governance, the governance you actually need to succeed. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a nice framework, a nice approach. Then the question is, well, how do you determine the subset that's actually relevant? And
Bob Siner had a really nice presentation yesterday where he basically said the old way of using governance to control the organization is not working. It's about enabling and helping them achieve their goals and not controlling. Now, if we spend too much time in those frameworks, all we do is control people. Everything from data privacy, everything's about control. And that's what they see from us, just controlling.
Yes, absolutely. And so let me show you, as an example, if an organization says, my objective for the next year is to create, first we're going to create a FNOL capabilities. How do you go from this ambition to determining what do you need to put in place? What's the process to go from ambition to governance requirement? And I'll start with, because I like to start with just from what you've presented, the idea here, and you saw this last time, AI governance framework based on these pillars. Data management is a fundamental part of AI governance, managing risk, cybersecurity, ethics. So we see this. Now, what does it mean to operationalize this? It means putting in place a model where the governance layer in the organization manage AI with structure, people, alignment, policies, capabilities, process. This is about the management capability. The governance operation means ensuring that the AI system layer does the right thing. So what's the link here? If an organization, if you read this bottom up, if an organization wants to create first notification of loss capability here, what does it need to do in terms of operation risk management, cybersecurity ethics? What's required? What's the minimum set of capability required here? And then what do you need in terms of AI management and oversight capability to support this? So instead of the other way around. So how do you determine this? So what I will show you is for LLM, as an AI technique for LLM, what are the governance requirements on each of these aspects? Operation risk management. What are the requirements? And then how do you determine a subset that's relevant for you? Let me switch to the Prodago application. So AI technique, LLM playbook. What you see here are, let me collapse this. AI management, governance operation. This is the top part and the bottom part of the diagram I've shown you. So governance operation is what happens here in project. So when it's an LLM initiative, certain components are required. You need to manage cybersecurity. You need to do pre-training safety. You need to do post-training safety. These are governance requirements specific to LLM. So you look at these and there's 566 component, and it touches, element of security, but it also touches element of ethics and privacy rights. And in the privacy rights, the right to the privacy notice and the consent management. There's a lot of things that needs to be considered and managed when you're creating an LLM solution. So how do you determine?
Sorry, Mario.
Yes.
I know that's and Paul, PG, I'm not picking on you, but I know this is one of your customers is making use of an LLM. Paul, so I wonder if you just see the benefit of being able to go through this playbook and recognize the types of things that need to be done, that you need to check up on. Now, I know that you're already quite far down the road, and sometimes it's really helpful to be able to say, sure, it would be nice that I knew what I needed to pay attention to, because sometimes we go into this without really understanding.
Yeah, this is a really helpful thing to just help you craft your path.
Yeah. Great. Sorry, Mario.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, I think, a great table of content, but there's a lot of material. What we did here is that we've identified a crawl, walk, and run approach to it. So, I mean, if you look at it and you do crawl, what you're going to see here is that when for an LLM technology, these would be like the minimal set of requirement, the minimal set of things you need to do, when you create an LM technology, a subset of it. Okay, we're down to 72. Okay, it's a first approach. It's, where do we start? It doesn't mean that's the only thing you need. It's a bundle, a group of components that you should possibly start with. Now, if you look at these requirements and you identify, you need to remove undesirable content for domain block list. The idea is that these elements here, they might require, they don't necessarily apply all the time. So there's a lot of things here. For example, privacy notice. Well, do you need the privacy notice? Maybe not. Maybe not. It depends. It depends on what? Well, it depends on the fact that the initiative will actually use personal information. So when you look at all this list, what are the parameter that will determine if this is actually required or not? Are you going to ask these 72 elements from all LLM initiative? And the answer is no. I'll show you an Excel perspective on this. So what you're seeing here is the same thing. What you're seeing here is cybersecurity. Okay, you see all the operating practices, and these are the parameter that will determine when it's applicable. It depends on what? It depends on the intended behavior of the model. It depends on how the model will be used, the characteristic of the model, the context of the initiative, the source of data. So the idea here is, how do you determine exactly the subset of requirement that's applicable? So what we did here is that we took all these 600 requirements and we've identified in what context exactly are they applicable. And we basically also identify what detailed element of context and the questions that will determine the applicability of the operating practices here. So the intention, what I'm showing you, a lot of detail here, but how do you go from all these requirements to how do I know exactly in my project what's applicable? So here we've associated each of these elements to the question. So what that means is that if you have a project and the project, is an FNOL initiative, the idea is there's a questionnaire here, will it be deployed in production? Will it be only a proof of concept? If it's only a proof of concept, certain element like deployed data quality metric and production will not apply. So what are the questions? All the questions I've shown you, we actually ask for these questions. For these elements, we ask the different parameter, and based on the answer, being able to automatically identify the subset of requirements that are applicable. So I won't go into too much detail here, but what I'm trying to do is to say, if a governance strategy is actually the governance means to achieve the ambition. The ambition, if they are about FNOL, you can determine and look at the set of requirements here and identify going up what's required to succeed. Define a subset of it that's meaningful. And this is what I've presented. And I've presented it from the perspective of FNOL. I looked at, if you want to build a FNOL solution, what are the governance requirements for LLM? And you saw that list of requirements. Now, let's say you're in India. Okay, we're doing the training in India next week. Let's say you're in India and you're building an FNOL strategy, an FNOL solution. What about DPDPA, which is the privacy law in India? Does it impact what needs to be done? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I'll show you how, the idea is to go from what are the governance requirements for LLM, and then add to these requirements the privacy requirement. Let me show you how it comes out in our perspective here. I'll go back to enlarge this just a bit. So the Digital Personal Data Protection Act is the privacy regulation in India. So we have a playbook for this. So it means we took here all the chapters and all the requirement from the India regulation. And we said, well, it's asking for notice, it's asking for consent. And we've looked at all these requirements and we said, well, here's what's required to be done. So communicate privacy notice to an individual, draft privacy notice, required content. So we went from the privacy regulation in India to what's required here. The idea is communicate privacy notice here. This is this something that applies to the LLM context? So the way we do this here, I can compare and align with the LLM here. So what does it tell me here? It tells me I'm able to look at the India privacy regulation and ensure it's addressed by my LLM governance requirement. Let's do it the other way around. I'll go to the...
Sorry, Mario.
Yes.
If I'd love to just show this to Paul. And Paul, I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm just trying to. I know we had a discussion of what should I be checking if I'm going to use an LLM. What should I be checking? Yeah. And it's really interesting when if you go to that privacy where you are asking for consent. This is so the right to be informed. So what we can see here is that this use of LLM will prescribe the fact that we get this level of consent from the individual. So when the individual is wanting to participate in that use of LLM, they need to give you explicit consent. Paul, does that make sense? So it's nice that you're using a chatbot or whatever, or LLM in the background, but as soon as you do that, the individual needs to be notified that this is a warning, this is a challenge. Am I stating that correctly, Mario? Is that something you can show them?
Yes, absolutely. So the idea is you're building an LLM solution. We've got a set of governance requirements adapted for LLM. On top of it, other requirements might add to this. So what you're seeing here is the playbook, and if you look at the DPDA, so what does that mean? We've said, oh, let's start with the crawl component of the playbook, okay, of the LLM playbook. This is good. But what you're going to see here is that the right to accuracy, okay, that implies that in your project, you need to design a mechanic within the AI initiative to rectify personal information in the model being built if the model capture data. What you're seeing here is that DPDPA, okay, is actually asking for this. So what you need to do is you need to say, well, this is something we must do in our context. So you start with a lean approach. What do we need to build LLM? And you add to it things that might make you go to jail. That's kind of the approach. It's additional requirement, but the idea is to be as lean as possible. You're not going to do things just that are not required. So you start with the crawl and you add to the element you choose to prescribe, even if they are usually in a more mature context, okay? You might decide to add them right now because they are requirement from a privacy regulation. Might it be DPDPA or GDPR, for example, depending on the context where the solution is being built.
And Mario, I like what you're talking about there, because this right to accuracy talks to the data quality fit for purpose. So we need a contextual dimension that will validate that we have the appropriate quality here. So all these things that you're bringing out, it talks about the data quality planning that we need to have ready for the system. So nothing going into the LLM must violate this quality.
Yes. So if you look specifically at that one, design and implement a rectification, what that means from the Indian regulation, it means someone that consent to provide personal information through the chatbot might ask that is information it provided might be rectified. Let's say they make a mistake. Okay, it means you need to ensure that you develop a mechanism so they can rectify the information if you extract it from the element and put it somewhere. So if the information is used and structured in the context of a project, you need, as part of the initiative, to implement a mechanism to rectify it. And so rectification capabilities in that case is an explicit requirement of the regulation. So these regulation might add to the best practices required to govern LLM.
So Mario, if we go through back to the first notice of loss, so if I'm collecting personal information about the claimant, for that LLM, I would need to support the ability for them to view that personal information that we have collected and correct it where appropriate or to rectify it. And then we would need to replace that personal information that is in the LLM with the adjusted information. So we'd have to ensure that perfect quality of personal information as part of this process. Is that also what this means?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the right to accuracy, to have correct information, is one facet. Look at this one, the right to be forgotten. It means someone can say, well, I've provided you my information, through this process. I would like you to erase from your system all the information you have on me. So let's say, the LLM system you're building include actually information about people. Okay, that would be a different nature of things. What that means is that you need to build upfront capability for model editing or model unlearning capabilities. You need to do this upfront. If you don't have to retrain your model because someone wants to be forgotten from the ingestion in the system. So the idea is knowing upfront these capability, these requirement will lead to two things. You'll be better prepared, or you might decide not to do the initiative if you see that you don't have the capability to do this. But knowing upfront will avoid to end up at the end and finding that some capabilities are critically missing to be able to deploy the solution in production.
So Mario, let's go back to the practical example. I'm doing FNOL, I'm collecting personal information, and there's that step that you said, you were there just now. If I go, implement processes to ensure quality of personal information. Would we have to have a step within the chatbot where we validate that personal information with the individual? So we'd need to have a conversation that the chatbot has to ensure that we get a stamp of approval that we've got the right quality of that information.
Absolutely. So it could mean, validation. It could also be done by taking the input from the FNOL and trying to connect with the golden record from your MDM processes. If you have an official list of client, if you want to use input from the FNOL and to get and extract information about the policy, you really need to, for that reason, to validate the quality and the veracity of the personal information you get, not only as a right of the individual, but also as a fundamental requirement to be able to connect to your golden record of a client list to access the transactional data.
And I was just thinking of the funeral policy. So if I take out a funeral policy and then I leave money to maybe my daughter or maybe a few of them, then we would then have to introduce those participants into the master data and reference data. I mean, that now we start almost seeing that I need to collect information about the people that are going to benefit or are going to be paid out, and you need to introduce them into the system if we didn't have them.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, sorry, I've frozen here for a second.
Okay. Maybe just to ask, are there any questions? Paul Bolton, no, you've done quite a bit of, you spent a lot of your life in insurance. I'm wondering if any comments from your side?
Thanks, Howard. No, just listening and learning. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay. But I mean, the thing that's amazing for me is a case of you working with a live business use case, and because these things are connected, there's always these interconnections. You're realizing that you may need to add this functionality to the system, yes, or to the chatbot or to your reference and master data to be able to complete this process and adhere to the privacy restrictions. What yours, Mario?
Yeah, and you know, you go with the LLM fundamentals to govern. You can add privacy constraint that you need to consider. But then if you're in, we're working with the different Canadian departments, Department of Defense, the Department of Transport, and they're building this type of capabilities. So privacy requirements is come on top of these fundamental LLM governance requirement. But there are others requirement. For example, they have open government requirement. They have the obligation to publish source code and mechanism and certain obligation of transparency about the mechanism. So these requirements are not fundamental in the LLM fundamental governance requirement. Again, privacy requirement will add to the fundamental one, but other discipline, other facet, privacy is one, certainly certain specific security requirement in the context of the organization will add to it. Certain requirement regarding data sharing agreement regarding open data, again, will add to it. But the fundamental approach here is, how can you be lean about this? How can you define a governance strategy that's informed by where you want to go, what do you need explicitly to support your ambition, and what are the constraints you need to consider in doing it? And if you use this approach, you'll end up with a set of governance requirements that will not only be as lean as possible, but also they will be sufficient to reassure the different stakeholder that this solution that's been built can be trusted. You mentioned last time, Howard, 95% of Gen AI initiative get zero return on investment. You know, because in the end, all these other facets are not well considered. So how do you make sure you consider them all? So that bottom-up approach forces you to look at explicitly at what you want to build and make sure you cover all the facets.
Now, Mario, if I was just to quickly jump to my presentation, and so let's say we were in Saudi. This is part of the National AI Index, and Saudi is demanding that they specially set up not a DMO, which is the data management office. They want to set up a DAO, which is the AI office. Then these capabilities, one would have to bring in a playbook for NAI, and we would have to check that these capabilities are adhered to, like data readiness, human capital, partnership. So this would have to be brought into that playbook, and we'd need to check that out. Is that the way we'd go about customizing the system for the different countries and the different contexts that we are in?
Absolutely. And if you're looking at what Saudi Arabia is trying to do, they've defined very strong foundation on data management requirement through the NDMO framework. Now they're considering something else, AI as a different silos. That's a trap. That's a trap. They need as soon as possible to consider and leverage the asset that they have, which is the data management NDMO requirement, and connect to the AI index that they've developed and show that the data management capabilities is a pillar of succeeding in AI. If they don't, it's about reinforcing the silos between data management and AI. But you're right, the approach is create a playbook for the National AI Index. And because it will illustrate that this index presuppose that data is managed adequately, but it's not something else. It's embedded in the AI governance requirement.
Thank you. And just to maybe ask Tariq, he's on the call. Tariq is in the KSA. Tariq, are you aware of these? I'm sure you're aware of the National AI Index. Is this making sense to you in terms of how you'd be able to work with this to ensure that you deliver?
Yes, Howard, it does.
Okay. I don't know how much of that National AI Index has been forced onto you. I'm sure that you have to.
As of now, in our organization, we are at a very, not at a level of. We are at a very early stage here. We are getting into the AI governance stuff. It's something for upcoming year.
Okay, great. And the
So
thing I like about, yes, sorry, Paul.
Sorry, I wanted to say, Tariq, you must maybe get onto a camel so that we can see your face. Him and I are going to have a camel dinner later tonight. But sorry, Howard, before you continue, I do have a couple of questions. So Mario,
Yes.
two questions. The one is just about the Prodago system itself, and then secondly the usage. But the first question is that questionnaire that you had that people go through. Does that actually use also AI in the background to construct or to help you guide, or was it not necessary to actually implement? Something
Yes,
as simple?
absolutely. So the way the playbook are built is using AI assisted technology. So that's
Okay.
very cool stuff, to connect the dots in the background. So because you don't want the connection that determine the prescription of a privacy component. Ideally, you want to use the same question, leverage the same question. You don't want to ask, the different question with the same purpose. So, and yes, to the answer, AI is used to create the playbooks and the questionnaire.
Okay, yeah, I thought it might. And then the second question. So Howard's been just mentioning, because we had a couple of offline discussions about this. And maybe I can just share my specific scenario, and you can guide me in terms of how to use this. But so in my case, quite a few of our customers are startups, although we also do have a few corporates that we work with. But in a startup scenario, that's often built around an AI idea. Howard made mention of this. The one customer, they use an LLM to do some to basically compare a written monkey puzzle based answer to a questionnaire after the person has done that assessment, they also do a video recording of that person answering questions, and they compare whether these two things correlate, in short. So the context is a startup, and it will be immensely useful, I think, for them to have something like this to make sure that they don't step into any accidental traps when using the LLM. And we don't have to talk about cost now, but let me just ask the question this way. This is such a comprehensive system, and obviously we're talking about national index in the context of governments and so on. But is it also usable and affordable from a startup perspective, or is the focus of the product and the system more to go for bigger organizations?
So the entire idea is to make it affordable for small organization. That's the idea. If you're a large organization, a subset, and you have your low maturity, there's a minimal subset to do this. We've worked with the Treasury Board of Canada where we ingested their internal directive. The entire focus was to take the Government of Canada internal policies and directive and identify the subset that would make them relevant for very small department of agencies. That's the whole purpose of the thing, to find relevance in very small context. I truly apologize. I need to drop. So our team audience, that was great discussion. Thank you all. And Paul,
thank you, Mario.
let's continue this discussion.
Okay. Thank you. We'll connect. Thank you, Mario.
Great.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks, everyone. So I don't know if there's any more discussions that you'd like to have in terms of how these frameworks connect. So just, Paul, also for your understanding, we also map to all of the deliverables. So every deliverable that a DPDA has, it would say, okay, this is the deliverable, and it's also contained within the LLM. So if there's a data quality assessment and data privacy is referring to it, then we can connect these two areas together. So we're trying not to hardwire the stuff, but really, as we drill down in every framework, we understand what work we need to do and what deliverables need to be created to do that work, and then we can connect these elements together.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, give us a sneak peek of then next week. Would you be going back into?
Sure.
Because I know you've also been working on the back end.
Yeah. So next week I'm gonna. Let me just find the deck. Okay, so let me just share this. This is what we'll do, which is quite interesting, is almost a data quality 101 in terms of how we need to understand the data quality side. And with AI and with some of the things we're talking about, I think we all know that data quality is based on the consumer. What is it that we need to do? And this consumer may be the head of, or the person in charge of FNOL. They're the business process person. Now, we would then have, okay, we need to deliver a product to the chatbot to handle FNOL, and we would have to identify the consumer and understand their requirements in terms of delivering that, and what would the appropriate information product look like. So there's this concept of quality control, instituting quality control on our data products. And then it's the assurance that the data coming in meets the quality for these products. And so the idea would be to say, well, how do I validate and how do I build anomaly detections to be able to ensure that these products work appropriately? So when do we detect a fraudulent claim, and how do we prevent the false negatives and false positives? So there's the assurance on incoming data. Do we have the right data? Have we trained it appropriately? And then the ability to do a root cause analysis when things are failing or we are getting false judgments, positive or negative. So that's the root cause analysis. And what's interesting then is then making use of the ISO 80061, which is the quality for reference and master data. So we would then say, okay, how do we use this framework to address the master data quality? And then there's also I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's that ISO 55000, which is data products. So what's the quality of that AI product, and what's the quality of the AI reference and master data system? And interestingly enough, when you look at these frameworks, you can determine that these are the AI quality dimensions, and then these are the data product quality dimensions. So contextual, is this data adding value? So that would mean my critical data elements or my critical features that are used for a fraud detection. What are the important features? Not everything, but what are the critical features that would be value added? Relevancy, is one more relevant than the other? And the appropriate amount of data. Do I have sufficient data to determine fraudulent transactions? So when I build my training sets and things like that, there's this challenge of how much is used for training, how much is used for testing, how much is used for production, and we have to create these different scenarios. So it's really helpful to understand which data quality dimensions apply to the data product and which ones apply to the AI system. Sorry. Paula, so is that helping you? That's sort of what we'll be going through. And that's the high level view. But then coming into the details, we would be delivering as this claim is being assessed. We would understand, well, where is the claim where is it positioned in these boundaries? So let me just present there. So where is the, sorry, not sure what happened there. Okay, so when you use the detection algorithm, this is the process. This is just to show you the process that you go through. First of all, we'd be focusing on FNOL. Then we would normalize the features that are going to be used to score for the anomalies on that FNOL. And this is the process of doing data normalization. So how do we take big data and big differences? Can you see this claim amount can run anywhere between 100,000 and very small amounts? Claim duration is 0 to 50 days, and claim age is between 0 and 83. So these different features, one, for example, claim amount will overrun the other features. So how do we normalize all these features so they don't dominate each other? And here we can bring it between 0 and 10 and minus 10, and similarly with duration days. So how do we create standard technique? How do we create normalized data? And then how do we use the algorithms to recognize that this new claim has moved over from normal claims to anomalies, potential anomalies in the situation? So what's really nice here is to say I can use multiple algorithms, and then I use what's called an ensemble to be able to say how many of these routines have detected an anomaly. and what are the appropriate routines for this type of situation. And the more confirmation you get, the more stronger you recognize the results. Okay.
So next week you'll take us through this process actually slowly and
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll go through exactly how does one class SVM detect an anomaly and show you how big the anomaly is. So there's a ranking on the score. So this is borderline anomaly and then borderline normal. And how do you work with the data to create those boundaries and then see where the boundaries are and see where the claim is, and then help the individual understand how to go about that scenario. So this is the recipe. Work with synthetic data, split the data up, label the data, inject anomalies, make sure that the model detects the anomalies. If it doesn't detect the anomalies, then you know you got a problem. Your model's not working. So there's a whole lot of training of this model before you take it into real data.
Awesome, looking forward to that.
Great. Any questions from, I mean, what I'm finding with all this work is it's amazing how a lot of my data quality dimensions are focusing almost at a column level, because it's really hard to focus at a row level. So if you think of claim amount, claim age, claim duration days, now I've got 4 variables that are working together at a record level. Okay. But the boundaries are set at a table level, but this is a record level. So I'm having to check data quality at a record level, which has always been hard unless there's strict rules like this postal code exists in this suburb. Those are the things you can pick up pretty easily. But when it's undefined, when it's not well known, how do you look for those patterns? And the big thing with reasonableness is set a pattern. If the element goes outside of the pattern, get somebody to look at it. Get someone to analyze why it's out and make a judgment call before they say, no, you can't have this thing, or we're going to now spend another 3 weeks analyzing your claim and you're not going to get paid out for your funeral.
Cool. Looking forward to that.
Excellent. Any other questions? Dai, I'm sure you may have, I mean, Dai, you've done data quality for a long time. Are you seeing some of the changes we can go through with AI?
Oh, Howard, yeah, thanks for another great session. I'm so new to this AI stuff, but I've been experimenting with using just the free stuff, ChatGPT and Claude, to analyze data sets for me and see what they come up with, and then giving it some rules and see how better it is. And I'm just gobsmacked.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier than doing it manually, you know?
And I think, Dai, the big thing that we're finding with these type of anomaly detection routines, you know, again, when we don't know a lot about the data, we're not the SME. It's amazing how much we learn by studying the patterns and then trying to get the SME to explain to us, what does this pattern mean, or why is this why is this outlier okay? So just by then seeing the patterns in whatever we're working on, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm busy working with a completely different set of data sets right now, which is quite interesting for me because it's not stuff I've used before. So I'm really excited about looking for the patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the reasonableness has always been one of the data quality dimensions that I've certainly included in workshops. So is this a reasonable value? is
Yeah.
this a reasonable date? Yeah, whatever it is, yeah. And you know, I'm passionate about rules as well. So if we can just, so my next step is to give, I call her Claudia. I don't like the Claude, and she's quite happy with that. And so I'm going to give her some rules and see what a difference that makes to the output she gives me. So I'm really moving in baby steps, though, you know.
And one of the things that I read a paper on was that what they can do now is analyze your description of the incident. So, for example, if you're writing about a theft, they can, or about a medical disease or a medical challenge that you have, they can analyze the words that you use and detect whether you are describing it appropriately, or maybe you're making some of the stuff up. You're using words that don't fit that context. And that's another level of data quality that we've never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's exciting times ahead. It really is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Howard.
Any other questions? Great. Mr. Bolton, last time to ask a question. I'm sure you've got lots of questions running around.
Howard, I'm just honestly just learning, actually, just sucking it up. Yeah, no, thanks.
Great. All righty.
Hey,
Thank
could
you so
you
much.
please reshare your screen that had the Wang strong data quality matrix?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let me try just to go to that. This one over here, Charles?
Perfect. I just want to, I want to use that as reference. I think that's a really valuable picture you have there. So I want to try to reference it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. When I saw this, there's more to it, and I'm going to take you through this next week in terms of using multiple algorithms to focus on where we're sitting in terms of the SPC. So using these ensembles and things as well to pick up that machine learning or the model has been drifting, and where are we picking up false positives and negatives. So again, these are the types of things that governance needs to justify, that they are monitoring the model. They can't just let the model keep on making decisions and there's no monitoring, there's no metadata or trend on how these positives and negatives are coming out. So if we keep on saying anomaly, this model is useless. I mean, it's just constantly bringing the human back into the loop to check everything, and it's delaying the process. So that's the important thing with the SPC there as well. Great. I think I could probably keep on talking for the next few hours. That's
Great session. Thank you so much for organizing this. I got to drop.
Thanks, Charles. Okay. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Howard. See you all.
Cheers, man.
See you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.